Hi, I'm Chris Birch. I've been riding and racing motorbikes my whole life. I've raced motorbikes in extreme enduros, the Red Bull Romaniacs, Erzberg, Roof of Africa, that sort of thing. Had some good results and some good wins there. I've raced the Dakar Rally, New Zealand Enduro Champs, Australian Enduro Champs, South African Enduro Champs. Pretty much my whole life's been dedicated to motorbikes. A big part of my life these days is traveling around the world and teaching people. So I'm lucky I get to teach nearly sort of 300 or 400 people a year at the moment. But unfortunately can't be everywhere. So one of the questions I get asked the most is how to do wheelies on these big bikes. So that's what we're going to run through for you guys today, the basic skills and the techniques involved of doing a wheelie, controlled wheelie on the big adventure bikes. So there's lots of different reasons for learning how to do a wheelie. When you've got control, we can do a good controlled functional wheelie. It's possible to get over terrain much safer, much more efficiently. It's a good get out of jail for free card. So if you're going a little bit too quick, you're going to hit an obstacle, sometimes lifting the front wheel will lessen that impact and make it easier to traverse that sort of stuff. And of course, the main reason you're all here, it's really good fun. If you can't do wheelies on an adventure bike, you're really missing out on a lot of the good times. So before we get started, we need to do a little bit of setup work. Wheeling off-road, it's really important that we have the correct tyre that's going to give you the traction that you need. You're not just going to wheel spin, you're going to actually accelerate. And obviously we're talking about doing wheelies off-road because doing wheelies on the road is naughty. So if you've got a more road-focused tyre, you're going to find this really difficult. You're not going to get the acceleration and the drive that you should do. So we're looking for a more aggressive block pattern off-road style tyre that's going to give you that lift, that acceleration that you need to do this properly. It's also really important that you have your rear brake set so that you can access it properly when you're standing up. If the back brake's set too low, like it would be for a street setup, when your hips are right back trying to lift that front, it's going to be hard for you to reach the back brake and make this much more dangerous. So it's really important that you have that rear brake set in a position that you can access it when you're standing up, especially when you've got your hips right towards the back of the bike. So we want to have the back brake pedal set so it's slightly above parallel with the foot peg. If it's set down too low, you're going to have to reach for it in that moment when you really need it, and bad things are going to happen. So as well as having the right type of tyre with that good block pattern, you're also going to want to make sure that your tyre pressure is correct for off-road. If your pressure is too high, you're not going to get the traction that you need. So it's a little bit high. I want to feel a bit more flex than that. So I'll let it down a bit more. With the heel in my hand, I should be able to get just a little bit of flex in there. That way I know my pressure is going to be about right, and I can get some traction out of it. That's probably somewhere around 20 to 22, 23 psi for the terrain that we're in today. So there's two sides to doing this wheelie. There's the body movement side of it, and there's the engine and clutch side of it. We're going to practice each one individually, then put them together and hope that we get a nice, sweet looking wheelie. So as you guys have probably discovered, one of the hardest parts of doing a wheelie on the adventure bikes is getting that traction to make the front end come up. It's not just turning into wheel spin. And a really big part of that is creating that compression, that load down through your suspension into your tyre to create the traction. And the way of doing that is exactly the same as kind of doing a jump. You're loading down into it and springing up. So you're creating pressure, but you're also creating lift. The way to do that is exactly the same as doing a jump. So load up, spring up, compressing down into it, making the bike light. Really important is that you're moving your ankles. If you don't move your ankles, it doesn't work as well. You've got to get that spring going through your feet. That creates that compression, creates that load, creates the traction, creates the wheelie. Cool, so we're compressing down to that suspension, loading down into that tyre, and trying to make the bike light. So it's down and up. There is two sides to it, there's two steps. We're not just wanting to compress and lift up and try and pull the bike off the ground. We're not trying to do a bunny hop here, we're trying to do a wheelie. So we're going to compress and then push your hips back to make the front end light and push the back tyre down to the ground, create that traction, and trying to create the rotation in the motorbike. We're not trying to pull and lift the bike up into a wheelie, we're trying to rotate the bike around onto a wheelie. So it's compress, up, back. 1, 2, 3, back to there. Right along the paddock, nice and smooth, constant throttle setting, get that going right, practice it until it feels boring. You don't have to think about it anymore, and then you're ready to move on to the next step. So once you've got that body movement side of it practiced and that's easy and familiar, it's time to move on to the engine and the clutch, the throttle and the clutch. So you can cheat this wheelie with just using your throttle, not worrying about your clutch too much. But the problem with that is you'll tend to get a slower lift in the front end, so you'll have more ground speed, more acceleration to do the wheelie. When you're on the trail, if you've got to have a heap of acceleration to lift the front wheel up, by the time you get to that log, rock, tree root, ditch, whatever it is, you're going to be going really fast, and that's possibly not a great situation. If you can use the clutch, you can pop the front wheel up a lot quicker, and that results in less forwards acceleration and more control on the trail. Cool, so we want to be using the clutch to create a slap, a crack of power, not a long, slow release of power, a really sharp, aggressive launch of power. So you're covering the clutch, 1 or 2 fingers, really important, no more than 2. If you're using your whole hand on the clutch, when you pop the clutch, it's like you're letting go of the handlebars, and we don't want to be doing one-handed Travis Pastrana stuff just yet. So I use 1 finger, 2 fingers is okay. Any more than that, you're starting to run out of things to hang onto the handlebars. So you're starting off, you're slipping the clutch, and you're building up a little bit of revs in the engine. Brrr. Then as you feed the clutch in, you're also winding on the power. So it's brrr, brrr, brrr. After a short spike of power, you're feeding the power in with the clutch, and you're taking it away with the clutch. Good way to think about it, this is your generator, your clutch is your distributor. You get the generator up and running, and you feed that power in using the distributor. The really important thing now is in the timing of those 2 different sides of it put together in the right way. As you're compressing down into your suspension, as you're loading up into your foot pegs, your clutch comes in and you start building up a bit of revs in the engine. So clutch comes in now, compressing down into that suspension, and at your maximum point of compression, when everything's as far down, as loaded up as it can be, clutch comes out of that point. So it's clutch in, down, 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 clutch out, back to there, clutch back in again to control it. Really important to remember is your bike's not going to roost out of control with a clutch in. It's not going to backflip with a clutch in. It's not going to shoot off across the paddock into the fence with a clutch in. If you leave the clutch out, if you abandon the clutch, you're kind of on autopilot. Your clutch is a really important part of your safety here, so make sure you're keeping that control on it the whole time. So the timing, perfect timing is to have that power come out when the tyres as compressed as it can be, when the suspension's as compressed as it can be. That's the perfect point, when everything's as heavy as it can possibly be. If you can't quite do perfect though, a little bit too early on the clutch is better than a little bit too late. Because if you think about what's happening to your back tyre, as you're compressing that back tyre, compressing that suspension down to the ground, the tyre's getting more and more pressure loading it into the ground. If you're a little bit too early on the clutch, you'll still hit that maximum compression point with the power released. So being able to do a wheelie is way more than just getting Instagram likes. It's a really useful tool for getting over terrain such as logs, rocks, tree roots, drains, compressions, that sort of thing. It's also, as a training exercise, a really good skill builder because you're going to have to work really hard on your clutch control, your throttle control, your balance, your timing, all real key skills of riding a bike off-road are going to get improved, hammered and challenged in practicing this wheelie. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you've got something out of it and you can do nice, safe, fun wheelies now. We're looking at putting together an instructional series of videos for big bike adventure riding techniques. If that's something you want to see, please like this video, comment on it, and let us know what it is that you guys want to have in that series. What techniques would you like us to go through? What would you like to learn on your adventure bike? What is it that you're struggling with? Just let us know. We'll put it together and hopefully it can be a really good thing for you.